Hi, I'm Victoria Alexander. I'm the owner of Realty Collective, and welcome to Buying into Brooklyn. Realty Collective is a boutique real estate firm. I started 18 years ago to defy the stereotypes associated with real estate in New York City, which I'm all sure you're all familiar. The workshop was designed to outline the buying process in Brooklyn, but we also work in Manhattan. And everybody also chime in where they work, but I do mostly Manhattan, Upper Manhattan, and Brooklyn. I would say Staten Island's a little bit out of my realm, Queens a little bit, but definitely not doing the Bronx, even though that's where I have my own property. The workshop. New York City is very different beast than the rest of the country. So even if you bought in somewhere outside of New York City before, it doesn't prepare you for the experience you're going to have here because things are just done a little bit differently here. It can be overwhelming, especially if you've never done it before at all. So we'll give you a good place to start today. We offer this workshop freely so that you have the information at your fingertips to make educated decisions and to tear down the gatekeeping of information that is often used as scary sales tactics to frighten you into working with people that might not be the person that's right for you and right for the job. So do not fall for fear-based tactics, and educate yourself as much as possible and pick people you like and trust to guide you through this process. We want everyone to feel empowered and educated. This is the biggest investment you'll make in your life right at this moment. And you want to make sure you're making the right decisions for yourself, and you hire experts you need to guide you and help you avoid costly mistakes, because they do happen. That's not scare tactic. It's just you want to make sure you're prepared to avoid those situations and have people that can help you through that process. We'll provide the basics you need to know before starting your journey, as well as provide you with the tools to make some of the first steps. Just a reminder again, Farah launched the poll, so please answer the questions if you can. It really helps us understand, the temperament of the people on this call and what's happening in the market, and do some little bit of market research and understand where everybody's at in this process and where they're joining us from. So I'm going to introduce the dream team, Lisa and Rashida. We've been working together for a very long time and have done, countless deals together. This presentation used to be given in person at the Brooklyn Brewery when I first developed the Buying into Brooklyn class. And then during COVID, I worked with a business coach to work through my stage fright and put it online. And now we've been doing this class for the last 3 years. And it's important to me to work with other strong women and with people that I have long-term relationships with. It's easier to keep everyone accountable and communicate, especially when time of the essence, and most importantly, to keep the deal on track and everybody on the same page. So I'm going to hand it over to Lisa and Rashida. Lisa, do you want to go first?
Sorry about that, just unmuting myself. So yeah, my name's Lisa. I am a loan officer at Cross Country Mortgage. I specialize with first-time home buyers. I love helping people buy their first home. It's scary and it's a big deal. And it's also a huge moment in your life, and I love to be a part of it. My regional focus is New York City, co-ops, condos, multifamily, single families. I can also do things in pretty much all over the country, but specifically Westchester, Philadelphia, Connecticut, all those areas. But my focus is really New York City. I'm excited to hear what kind of questions you guys have and see how I can help you out. Take it away, Rashida.
Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rashida Sadiq. I'm a partner in the law firm of Serpico, and Sadiq PC. I have been practicing real estate law going on 20 plus years. So it's been a while, but I represent plenty first-time purchasers, whether you're looking at co-ops, condos, houses, multifamilies. My office is located downtown Brooklyn, but I'm licensed in New York and New Jersey, and I represent clients in all of the boroughs including Westchester, Rochester, and also Long Island and the Hamptons as well. So I look forward to giving you guys kind of an insight and the legal paperwork that you should be aware of and things that you will come across as you start this, this process. I liken it to a roller coaster that, you've been, looking for this property, and then you get to the point where you actually enter it into contract and turning over this down payment that you've been signing for, saving for many years. So you definitely want to understand what you're signing, and you want to make sure that your attorney is able to explain that process with to you. So great to, be available today to give you kind of the insight on what to expect.
Great, thanks, Rashida. So those are two people. You need a mortgage professional and a lawyer, and then you need a buyer's broker here in New York. And I think that sometimes people don't understand the role of having a buyer's broker, but it's a complete asset to, especially for first-time home buyers. They have a fiduciary responsibility to you, and they guide you through this process. So my role as a buyer's broker is I'm your coach. I cost nothing to buyers. People have said, oh, well, the other broker, if most people on this call are going to be buying in areas where everybody's a REBNY member, and they do not discourage other brokers from representing buyers because they understand the value of having another broker on the deal. It's really out in spaces like Canarsie and Flushing and other things like that. So if those are neighborhoods you are interested in, we can have a discussion about the pros and cons of working with a broker, and if it's right for you, and who I would happily give you some free advice on what steps you should take. But if you're looking in downtown Brooklyn, Williamsburg, Manhattan, anywhere in Manhattan, you should be having a buyer's broker represent you. It is in your best interest, and other brokers that are working in those areas want you to have a broker because they don't need to do twice the work. They have other deals and other buyers, and everybody's plate is very full right now. So there's no cost to you. The seller pays both brokers. It's important because this is basically free expert advice that you need as a first-time home buyer, that the seller's broker. So when you walk into a listing, that broker represents the seller. Their fiduciary responsibility is to the seller, and they're never going to be able to say things, even as a dual agent, to protect you and guide you through this process, because they have their first client that they're always be thinking of. So a home matchmaker, therapist, your sounding board, whatever it takes to help you get into your first home and keep you as sane as possible. As Rashida just said, I call it the emotional roller coaster that is the home buying process. More literally, my job is to guide you throughout this process, give you advice based on my almost 20 years, same as Rashida, of experience in the Brooklyn market. At this point, I've experienced almost everything there is. So I can prepare clients for all of the hurdles that they're going to have to overcome. It's my job to get you into your first home and make you a homeowner, protect you from your own instincts, because when you're negotiating and you feel like someone's squeezing every penny out of you, your instinct is to be like, no, but that at the end of the day, you might realize that your emotions were getting ahead of you making the right decision for yourself, and you needed someone to talk you off that ledge from walking away from your dream place because the negotiating got a little hot. So can give you lots of examples of how that has happened in the past, and even let you talk to some clients that have made that mistake in the past. So we want to get to the closing table. Plus, these services don't come as a cost to you, so there's no reason not to have a buyer's broker and advocate for you. Doesn't have to be me. Interview some people and make sure that you're picking the right person for you and right person for the job that's an expert in the thing that you're trying to find. So these are the three people you have to have: buyer's broker, lawyer, mortgage professional, in my opinion. You're doing yourself a disservice if you don't have them. And the first thing you should do is get your pre-approval taken care of. So interview everybody for these jobs and make sure that you ask them the right questions. We have a couple links on how to interview, and make sure that they answer the questions that they're going to be able to guide you through this process. And personality type is really important. Does this person have the right temperament for you? Are they answering your questions so you understand the information they're communicating in layman's terms, or are they using scare tactics? Make sure that can I take advice from this person and listen to their guidance? If you can't respect them and take advice from them, you shouldn't be working with them. There's an intimate process based on trust and transparency, and that's the kind of relationship you want with all of your expert advisors. So don't settle for anything less. And make sure you pick with people that have relationships, long-standing relationships in the industry. If your best friend just got their real estate license, they are not doing you any favors, and you're not doing them any favors by letting them take you through this process. Well, you're doing them a favor, this process, because they don't have the relationships that are going to make sure that you win the bid, and then know how to work with other brokers in a way that will make sure the deal goes smoothly. So help your friend out by referring them to some other people, but don't let that guide your decision. This is a big decision. It should be based in a couple other things that we've talked about. I'm not going to go over them. Same thing with like hiring a lawyer. Don't hire your uncle. Everybody's always like, oh, my dad's a lawyer. Your dad is going to advocate for you beyond probably his responsibilities in a deal, and may possibly jeopardize the deal or kill the deal. And especially if he doesn't do real estate law all the time, you want to make sure that somebody does New York City specific real estate law. That is the expert you need for this deal. So why buy now? The rent's too damn high. We all can agree on that, right? You get your own design, long-term, short-term investment in yourself, and building equity. Those are why people want to buy here in New York. Right now, the cost between renting and buying has never been closer, because real estate has, rents have gone up so much that, and interest rates have gone up so that they're pretty much on the same plane. So why are you paying somebody else's mortgage? You should be paying your own. You're just building equity for somebody else and not for yourself. And you should really calculate how much what that number is throughout a year, and realize if you put that $50,000 a year into your own bank account and then somebody else, you'd be way ahead of the game in a couple of years. So if you're looking to stay in Brooklyn for the next 3 to 5 years, then buying is your best investment in yourself. There is a rent to buy matrix that Farah is going to put in the chat. It's based from the New York Times. It will help you figure out and calculate the numbers. If you're in a rent controlled or rent stabilized apartment, buying might not be the best option for you, because you can really calculate what those numbers look like long term, and it might be best to hold on to that apartment and not buy. So you've assembled your team. That is the first step, not to go on the internet. It's great to look on the internet, to not go to open houses, but to figure out who is going to be your representative and understand what the steps are. Even if you're ready to buy in a year or 2 years, we're here at every step of the way through this process to get you prepared to get into contract and buy your home. And that doesn't mean we start when you're ready to start looking. That means we start now and help you get to when you're ready to start looking, ready to put in offers, ready to sign the contract. It is a long process. I've worked up with people up to 5 years. So do not hesitate to reach out to us, because we are with you for the long haul. So I previously mentioned the big 3, plus you'll need an inspector. Most places need inspection. Rashida is going to advise that you always get an inspection. You also might need a contractor or an architect, and these are people we can recommend as well. So you found your team, you're ready to move forward. The first thing you do is you call your mortgage professional and understand your buying power. So Lisa, take it away.
Thanks. So yes, it's very important for the first step to get pre-approved. And the reason you want to do that is for a few reasons. First of all, you want to know what your buying power is. You want to make sure that you're looking at places with Victoria or online or however you're looking, to make sure that you're not looking for places over what you can be pre-approved for, because there's no fun in that. And that also you're not undercutting what you can actually be approved for if you want to, have that housing payment. So it's really important to know what your buying power is. And how you know what your buying power is to talk to a mortgage professional. So I think one of the most sort of misunderstood things about my profession is thinking that being a pre-approved is sort of a one-stop shop. It's actually pretty personal. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. I'm going to ask you, what you think you're buying, what you think you're going to buy. Is this your forever home? Is this your first time home that you think you're going to be in a few years? What's your income like? What's your employment history? Where's the down payment coming from? All of this I'm asking to help find the right product for you. And I think where me and my team in cross country really stand out is that I have probably over 90 products. So I can figure out the right product for you rather than fitting you into the 130-year product I have. I will get documents from you. I will run your credit and I will crunch those numbers and I'll get you a pre-approval. And that pre-approval is really a working draft. So as you start to see more things with Victoria, we can fine tune what that pre-approval is. And like Victoria said, I work with some people that, are ready to go and find a place within 2 months of talking to me. And some people that it's been quite a few years for us to get them to the point that they're pre-approved. That's totally fine. This is one of those instances where knowledge is sort of power in terms of figuring out what you can be approved for and what a mortgage for the property you think you might want to buy might look like. A few things. So I 100% can pre-approve people that are self-employed. It's not like if you're self-employed, you can't get a mortgage. There are some hoops to jump through in terms of looking at your tax returns and making sure that the income that you're showing on your tax returns is enough for us to qualify you for a mortgage. So 100%, I probably 50% of my business is self-employed borrowers. I work with them all the time. That's definitely something that might be possible to get you pre-approved. It's just something that would be a situation to talk sooner rather than later. In terms of products, you have a lot of different options. New York State has a special first-time home buyers loan program where we are one of the preferred lenders. It is an income restricted program, but if you meet the requirements, they will give you up to 3% to help with down payment assistance. That can be used for down payment, for closing costs, to buy down the rate, whatever you want. So that is a great option if you meet the income requirements. We also have FHA, which allows you to put as little as 3.5% down. FHA is really good if you are applying for a single or multi-family home. Like Victoria asked in the questions, yes, that single first-time home buyers program does apply for co-ops and condos, single family or multi-family. There's also just conventional loans, right, where you typically put 20% down. And then there's also non-conventional programs where we use, for example, asset depletion or various other options to qualify you. So part of our conversation will be to make sure that to see what options are available, and then to give you sort of quite a few options of what the best mortgage might look for you. In terms of rate right now, right, we are definitely an increased rate environment from 2 years ago. The good news is that rates are slowly but surely starting to come down, which is great. What I've told everyone this year is that the rate that you have for the home that you buy this year is not the rate that you're going to have for 30 years. Honestly, it's probably not the rate you're going to have for even 2 years. This is the rate you have to get your property. Because once we finish this inflation cycle that has been going on for a while, we will, as is historically evident, hit a recession. And when a recession happens, rates are going to go down. So that's the way to sort of look at rate in this environment, is this is the rate to get you your home. And then when rates go down, you will refinance. I can tell you right now, most of the people that I've had clients for in the last year have been people that have been looking for 2 years and just got outbid. When rates were super low, everyone was, Rashid, I'll tell you, they were waiving mortgage contingency. They were waiving appraisal contingency. They were paying $200,000 over asking price just to get the place. And a lot of people can't or don't want to do that. And those are the people that are in the market now. And now is sort of the time to bounce, because once it gets into a recession and we get lower rates, all of these people that are waiting to buy will go back on the market and we'll be in that similar situation again. So after we talk and I have an application from you and I crunch the numbers, I'll give you that pre-approval. And that pre-approval is really a working draft. So as you start to see more things with Victoria, we will fine tune that pre-approval for the home that you actually buy. But it helps you get in the door and get and not only see what your buying power is, but also be ready for when you find the right place. Because as Victoria will tell you, when you find the right place, you need to be ready right away. The last thing I'll say about why getting pre-approved is so important is even in this environment, sellers, realtors call the mortgage professional to find out about that pre-approval. They want to know that, the loan officer has done their work and that this person is truly pre-approved for their loan. So all the documents I get from you will actually help you in the long run. Because I got to tell you, 9 times out of 10, when a realtor calls me and I tell them about all the work I've done on the file, that client gets the accepted offer because the seller wants to know that if they're going with this person and that they're getting a mortgage, that they're actually going to be able to follow through on it. And that's why the pre-approval process is so important. So that's sort of the nuts and bolts of pre-approval. And then again, once you get that pre-approval, you'll be able to go out with Victoria and start seeing what you can do with your purchase power.
Great. Thanks, Lisa. Victoria Hutto in the chat, you asked, does that apply to co-ops and condos? What were you referring to exactly?
She was referring to the New York State first-time homebuyers program,
Okay,
which,
great.
as I mentioned, it does. In terms of a direct link, it's a great program, but there are very specific requirements to see if you qualify. So I think the first step, Victoria,
Just give Lisa a call.
Alexander, is to give me a call and let's see if you fit that program.
Great. So back on just my 2 cents on the financing piece is that the things to avoid are Quicken, Rocket, any of these app-based mortgage companies, whoever is going to give you the best deal and give you the best product and is accountable and is going to work hard for you, you want someone that, shows you that they are responsive, they're responding to your emails. Lisa and I have been working together and it's on top of everything when we work together, but make sure that you do not use these app-based platforms. They do not understand the New York City real estate market. They do not understand co-ops. They do not understand the co-op approval process, board interviews, all of that stuff. They have killed deals, and other brokers, just like Lisa said, will say, get us another pre-approval, and we'll probably make you go with the local-based brokerage and not this app-based one because it's not. We're not comfortable moving forward with this company as the mortgage company. New York, like I said, New York City specific beak is not the same as the country. And this is a very personal process with a lot of moving parts. You want to be dealing with a person, not a bot, not somebody assigned to you off of the internet. You want to pick this person. What's the question? Do we need to be worried about shopping around with required to credit checks each time for pre-approval? My answer is no. Lisa, do you want to?
That's a great question. So mortgage is a secured category in the hard credit inquiries, specifically because you can't get a pre-approval without getting your credit run from a mortgage company. So it doesn't hit your credit in the same way as opening up a new credit card, for example. I will tell you that I will run your credit. I will run it once, so I have a picture of I have a full financial picture of what's going on. And I won't run it again until you find the right place and that we know we're moving forward. The credit report, as well as the pre-approval, is good for 4 months. But again, as long as your financial picture hasn't changed, so for example, you haven't bought a new car or changed your job or anything like that, I will reissue the pre-approval without rerunning your credit, so that you still have a valid pre-approval going forward. So long story short, it's not going to affect your credit. It's important to get done, and it's a one-time inquiry to just make sure you're pre-approved for a mortgage.
But I would also say if you have a full report, you can share that. Like just when you're applying for apartments right now, if you have a full report, you can share it as part of your documents and see if the bank takes it and use it just for your negotiating power. And then they'll probably have to run a full one from their preferred platform when you've decided to move forward with them. But when you're shopping around, if you don't want to be having all of these people run your credit, pull
It's
a
a
full one
little
yourself.
tricky though. It's a little tricky though, Victoria. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's just because a lot of times the full credits come from like Credit Karma or things that are not the same.
No, not Credit Karma. Yeah, we can tell you
Right.
what would be using, but like I would say, there are ways you can get your full credit report that can be used. That then not everybody's pulling it to help you figure it out, but not just use them. You can't just use the number. They need more than that to just actually see your debt to income ratio and take other factors into it. So now that you have figured out your buying power and talked to Lisa and understand what the full picture is of your full financial picture, the next step is to establish sort of your buying strategy. And that takes into timing, is it now? Is your lease up in 3 months and we need to make moves? Is your lease up in a year? Is you're waiting for an inheritance and you can't do anything until that hits your bank account and then you have to wait and get your gift letter? There's some other moving parts you're going to have to talk about on the financing piece if you're getting money outside of what you already have now. Gifts, inheritances, borrowing at your 401k. These are all conversations you need to have with a mortgage professional. So you're going to understand your buying strategy, which takes into your timeline, your budget, what your family style is, and what your lifestyle is. So if you have 1 to 3 months versus 5 years, you need to start the process as soon as you can get ahead of it so that you understand what you need to save for, what they're going to look for on your credit, and what you should be doing to best prepare yourself for a goal of buying in 5 years. Budget. It doesn't just come down to purchase price. It comes into maintenance or common charges, down payment, transfer taxes if you're doing new construction. So understanding the whole financial picture of what you're going to have to get together. So that's something we talk about. Family. Is this just you alone? Is it you and somebody else? If you already have other family members, children, pets, and what is it? Are you considering taking school into consideration? Is something we discuss. Lifestyle, does your commute matter? Or are you working from home? Or are you working from a co-working space and you can switch it? Do you need things in your quality of life, like being next to a park or brownstone, or amenities in your building, like a gym, because you're moving from Manhattan and you've never lived in Brooklyn, but you can't live without your amenities. So we have a quick overview of the types of housing you might see in New York City. We're going to post a link there. And then understand what types of housing match different neighborhoods. I know that a lot of people are like, I want to be in Williamsburg and I want to be in a pre-war co-op building. Those two don't match. There are no there's barely any pre-war co-ops in Williamsburg. So building typology needs to match the amenities and the neighborhoods. So there's a lot to discuss there if you want to be in Brooklyn Heights, Prospect Heights, Prospect Lefferts Gardens. That's where you're going to get some pre-war co-ops that possibly have doorman, but also have board approval process and understanding if you're going to pass that. Williamsburg's new construction mostly. Then I ask people when we're thinking about your buying strategy to make your list of 5 deal breakers, and then realize you will probably only get 2 or 3 of them just based on the type of apartments and the amenities that they offer these days. So unless you have an unlimited budget, you're probably not getting everything on your wish list. So just really narrowing down what that looks like and talking it through the realities of what that looks like in the real market. So co-ops, and so she's going to go over this a little bit more about closing costs, 1 to 3% for closing costs on co-ops, 3 to 5% on condos and new construction. If they're brand new, also includes transfer taxes, which the variety of numbers, so that we, depending if they're adding in the seller's lawyer fee, which probably none of you knew that they push that on to buyers, especially right now in things that are very desirable. Sellers have closing costs too. If they're selling on their side, their closing costs are much higher, 8%. So just keep that in mind when we're thinking about how long you'll need to hold it. 5 years, I always say, is the minimal to reach your break-even horizon, so that you're going to cover your closing costs on this end, have appreciation, and then cover your closing costs on the sell end. So where do you find these homes? Where do you search? The internet has changed everything. There are no more pocket listings. Mostly, there are not a lot of off-market stuff. Rebney has made brokers more transparent and more collaborative, and everybody works together and has access to the same listings. The days are over of, you never hearing about something that's hitting the market. Rebney is has developed their own platform, and there's no more gatekeeping when you're working with buyers and selling brokers to represent you. The unicorns of shopping at every brokerage, nobody does that anymore. So you're looking on the public sites you still have access to, because now they've made it so brokers have all the listings on one site if you're a Rebney member. Rebney is Real Estate Board of New York. I have to keep saying this acronym, I'm sorry. But StreetEasy, Trulia, Zillow, they're all owned by the same company, just letting you know. We always say StreetEasy because it's actually the most user-friendly, but Zillow owns StreetEasy, and it's actually most accurately represents the taxes and the type of property. Zillow will say a co-op is a condo in many cases, and if you don't want a co-op or can't pass a co-op board approval, you're going to be looking at listings that then you're not going to be able to move forward on, because Zillow doesn't know the difference, because it's a national platform and not New York City specific, like we talked about. So we can set up for searches for clients on our backend database that aggregate all the results from the New York City MLS. We're looking at most of the same listings, unless somebody has decided not to put it on StreetEasy for some reason. You'll see the seller's listing agent info, or you'll see a buyer's broker's info that has paid StreetEasy or Zillow to be advertised there. So even if you think you're contacting the seller's listing, you might be contacting a random stranger that will then try to solicit you. And that's okay. You just want to be in control and not let them pick you, you pick them. So seller agents represent the financial and best interests of the sellers, not the buyers. So try to avoid calling people off of the internet. Call and interview me and other brokers, and then pick somebody. They then inquire about all the apartments for you, schedule all the appointments, and make your life easier. That is their job. You should not be pounding down. You could still look on StreetEasy, and then you send them a list like, I want to see these 5 apartments. I'm free on Sunday. Like, this is the time available. I'm going to be getting to the apartments by bicycle or by car or by subway. So just factor in that time, and they should arrange everything for you and make your life easier. That's their job, is to help de-stress you from this process. So you want to develop this strategy with whoever you pick to be your buyer's broker. So Sarah's going to send you a condo versus co-op personality quiz to help you figure out what is the best property for you for that. And then we're just going to move into making an offer, because then you can take it away. Kristen, is it safe to assume that the bulk of what's actually on the market will be on StreetEasy? No, it depends. It just depends on who the brokers are. So I've seen listings that are not on StreetEasy. There's a listing that is at 335 Lincoln, 325 Lincoln. It's been on StreetEasy for 60 days, but it's been on Zillow for 200 days. So they put it on Zillow and then put it on StreetEasy 2 months later. And there's some backwards things that I catch all the time. So I said, don't make assumptions. Have a listing search set up with your broker, so it's coming to your email box as well as with another platform. So don't rely on just one specific thing, in my opinion.
Can I answer one question in the chat before we go to the next?
Sure, yeah.
So someone asked about, is there an optimal amount of time that they need to be on their current employer before beginning the pre-approval process? So per federal compliance, we need a 2-year job history. That doesn't mean you need to be in your current job for 2 years, but that means we need to know that you've been working for 2 years, or if not, you were in school or what have you. So if you're a W-2 employee, I have tons of them that even halfway through the process started a new job. That's totally okay. That doesn't mean that you're not going to get a mortgage. That's just something I need to know about sooner rather than later to let you know the paperwork I need. If you're self-employed, you need a 2-year job history. So you need to be self-employed for 2 years in order to get a conventional mortgage. And again, if you're not there yet, that's a situation where we start working on you now. And then when you have 2 years of self-employed tax returns, then we look at actually getting you pre-approved and into a home.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody else have any questions else about that? So when you have your pre-approval, and then I also have you fill out something called the revenue submit offer form before, as soon as possible. I encourage people to do it before we start looking. People, sometimes wait till they're ready to put in an offer, but I will tell you that that is too late. You'll make a cover letter and have your pre-approval together, and we will have that ready to go so that when you go out looking and you see the third or fourth apartment that day, or third or fourth apartment, in a couple of weeks, then you are ready to submit everything and you don't need to scramble that night because you have plans or a big work day or a presentation to present the next day, and you won't miss out on the opportunity of putting in an offer on your dream apartment because you didn't do the homework I signed you. I have examples of all of these things. That's fillable forms so that it makes your life easy. Examples of the cover letter. I'll edit it for you. You want to be prepared. So when you walk in and you're like, this is my apartment, it's ready to go. People often stumble over that first step, lose out on the first one, but then they're ready for the second one because they have all their paperwork ready to go. And I also have the learning experience of putting in an offer, so they're better prepared for the second one. That's why I encourage people sometimes to put in offers just to go through the process on not their A apartment, their A dream apartment, but their B. And I explain that in the follow-up that I send to people once we go down this path. So, existing market conditions. Interest rates are a little high, so sellers have been keeping property off of the market, which means that there's low inventory and that the buyers that have come back to the market, because it was a little bit slow over the winter months, but end of May, April, and now June has made it's been very busy. June has been, what are we at? June 13th. It's been crazy the last 2 weeks, but I would say really the last 4 weeks I've been working nonstop. And, it's highly competitive, that the apartments that come on the market and that are priced well, people that are prepared because they are serious about being in this market, if they're in this market with what's going on, are moving quickly. So it's important to also be prepared. Anything about the market you guys want to chime in on before I move on to the other parts? Okay, so one of the main resources that working with the buyer agent provides is the relationship and knowledge of other agents. I have 20 years of relationships with other brokers. It's really great when I get to do multiple deals in a year with the same broker or throughout the years that they know me, because it's just nice to have worked along these people for so long. So you've done deals together, their temperament, and they understand, like, I'm going to pick Victoria's deal, or I'm going to pick Lucy's deal because I know what it's like to work with Lucy. And the last time she was on top of things, she checked she dotted all her I's and crossed all her T's and got everything together great. This is the person I want to do a deal with. Like, I'm going to pick that person and encourage my seller to pick that person because they're in line with the other person, but I don't know the other broker, they're a gamble. So it's important. That's why I was saying earlier, important to pick people that have long industry relationships and history, that they're not green, that makes a difference when you're putting in your offer about who's submitting the offer for you, because brokers do take it into account. I definitely do. I don't want to work with somebody I've never worked with or work at a brokerage I've never heard of, or that, lots of other red flags that I've dealt with. And then understanding what the seller's agent strategy is part of it, and their temperament. So you know how to negotiate in the best interest of your client and play to those temperaments and understanding of how they've dealt in the past, to get you the best deal and to make sure you win the bid, because that's usually the hardest thing when we're in a competitive market. We talked a lot about how the other agents know the strategy and know me and know I know them, and negotiation strategy. Work with agents to create and then devise a strategy. So you want to work with your agent to create a strategy. Like, okay, my top number is 400. What we're gonna do is, well, like there's no other offers, or they've told us there's one other offer. I'm gonna have you call, like I call and I ask the broker some clarifying questions to kind of get a read on where they're at, and say, well, if I do this, like what'll happen? So then, since we only have this much room, we will put our offer in for 380 and see, encourage because I've heard language from them that they're gonna go to best and final regardless. So then we have room to go up. But if we put in 400, there's no room for us to go up for best and final. So understanding, you know, the negotiation strategy by understanding what's the other brokers communicating to you through hints sometimes. So everything it needs to be negotiated before you accept the offer, and then something called the deal sheet goes out. So if you want to keep the lighting fixture in the living room and that was excluded, or if you want to move into the apartment earlier, or the sellers want to stay in the apartment after closing for a month or two, or you want an extended closing time like 6 months, or you want the seller to pay for 3 months of maintenance to help you pay for a little bit more on the purchase price. Like all of those things need to be negotiated ahead of time. They get written down on the deal sheet and they get sent to the lawyers. So the lawyers don't have to do any negotiating. They just negotiate the terms of the contract and do their due diligence. So once the contract terms match the deal terms, you win the bidding war, you offer above asking or whatever the terms are. Your offer is contingent on a couple of things, contingent on financing, unless you're paying all cash or putting more than 20% down and you're willing to waive your financing contingency or waive your appraisal contingency. Is your offer contingent on inspection? We're going to say yes. And you're going to try to get an inspection before you sign the contract. Your lawyer, Rashida, is going to encourage you to do that. Is this an as-is sale? And Rashida will explain what that is. So I'm going to pass it to Rashida and then Lisa to talk about next steps. So we've negotiated the deal. Deal sheets go out. What happens next?
Okay, thank you, Victoria. I know it's been a lot so far. So you've been pre-approved by your lender. Your realtor has shown you the property. They've negotiated the major terms of the transaction, and now comes the part where you're looking to go into contract. As Victoria said, the first thing that's done by the realtors is sending out a deal sheet. And a deal sheet is just a summary of the accepted terms. And that's how the seller's attorney can prepare a draft contract. But prior to you signing the contract as a buyer in New York, a couple of things have to be done. Whether you're looking at purchasing a house, a co-op, or a condo, you want to do an inspection of the property. I always tell clients, physically, you love the property, but you want to know what's going on. And that's why you have to do an inspection. Because in the contract, when you're getting to that point of signing, there's going to be a provision in there in all contracts that state, excuse me, that you've either waived your inspection or you've done the inspection and you're taking the property as is, as per your inspection. Or I said, if you waive your inspection. So that happens prior to you signing the contract, but after the deal sheet goes on. If you're looking at a co-op or a condo, your attorney has to do what we call is due diligence review, because you're purchasing into a corporation or a condo association. So you need to know what the house rules are. You need to know if there's been a history of maintenance increases. Are there upcoming increases? Are there assessments? Is there litigation? All of those things happen during that due diligence period prior to you signing the contract. Because as I said, you're going to be putting down all of the funds, well, 10%, sometimes less of your down payment at the signing of the contract. And you want to make sure what happens, that you are sure that this is the correct property for you. So part of your attorney's job is to do that due diligence prior to you signing the contract. Part of the part of your job and for the realtors is for coordinating that inspection of the property. If between the due diligence and the inspection, something comes up. Let's say you find out, your attorney finds out there is a huge assessment coming up, or there's litigation in the building, or there's noise issues, or in the inspection, it turns out the electrical panel is out of date and it needs to be replaced, or there's issues with the windows. Those things can be negotiated. Credits can be negotiated prior to you signing the contract, or in the contract, it can provide that the seller is going to fix these items prior to the closing. Because once you sign the contract, it has any terms have to be in that signed contract for it to be binding. So clients always ask, when that deal sheet goes out, am I bound? No. In New York, you're not bound until the contract is signed by both parties, and the terms can be renegotiated up until you sign in the contract of sale. Also, you want to take into consideration your down payment. Your attorney's going to go over your closing costs, estimated the amount for you. If you're looking at a co-op, it's significantly less because a co-op is not considered real property in New York. So there's no mortgage tax, which is a big chunk of your closing costs. And there's no title insurance, which because once again, it's a co-op. But if you're looking at a condo or a house, it's going to be a larger closing cost because you have mortgage tax, you have title insurance, you have other things that have to be taken into consideration. As Victoria has said, kind of the rule of thumb for a condo or a house is maybe 4% of your purchase price is for your closing costs. It can be higher sometimes. For a co-op, it's really just going to be your legal fee, your co-op fees, and your bank costs. Those so it can be very significantly less. But all of these things happen prior to you signing the contract, so you understand what you're going into contract with. Once your attorney has completed the due diligence, everything is good. You've done your inspection, everything is good. The next part of it is going into signing the contract, understanding the terms of the contract, and giving your down payment. Most contracts are signed electronically these days, and your down payment is given via wire, 100%, because we know there's lots of fraud going out in this world. Your attorney will always want you to reconfirm any wire instructions verbally. You don't want to send something without speaking with your attorney, without confirming instructions. And I said, once again, your contract is signed electronically. If you go to the next slide, Farah, the next part of going into contract is what are your contract terms? Lisa, your attorneys probably work with your loan officer and will explain to you that one of your major contingencies in your contract is your mortgage contingency. What is a mortgage contingency? It means that if your loan, or if you're not able to get your mortgage, you have a right to cancel the contract and get the return of your deposit. Yes, you've been pre-approved, which is great, but there's a lot of things that happen after that once you go into contract that needs to happen in order to issue that formal commitment letter, such as an appraisal. If it's a co-op or a condo, the bank has to approve the building. And typically, your contract will provide that you have a contingency of 30 days, 30 to 45 days. And there may be times when you can get an extension if it's taken a little bit longer, but typically you want to try to get your commitment during that time period, because once you get your commitment, depending on the type of property, you are now locked into your contract. If you're looking at a co-op, there's two contingencies. One is your mortgage, and the second is the board approval. And that's why you want to also make sure that you get your mortgage commitment and working with the loan officer, because that affects how long you're in contract. Contract closing. New York, everyone is like, oh, when do we close? When do we close? As soon as we get into contract. It's an on or about date in New York because there's so many moving parts. Your contract will provide typically 60 days on or about. If it's a co-op, you're probably looking at roughly about a 90-day process, because you have to get the mortgage and you have to get the board approval. But if you're looking at a house or a condo, you're probably looking at more of a 60-day process. And of course, this is always is subject to seller moving out, your availability to close, all of the different moving parts, but generally 60 to 90 days for your closing. So as you start thinking of properties and putting in offers, things move pretty quickly once you get into contract, And those 60 to 90 days actually, as I said, move pretty quickly. Lisa can speak about the due diligence on the bank's end as far as getting the mortgage commitment within that 30-day time period. And there's things that your attorney is doing behind the scenes, such as getting a title search done to make sure that there's no issues with the property, that the seller is paying off any mortgages, there's no judgments, violations. As a buyer, I always tell clients, if you have a car, or if you rent cars, parking tickets, those come up. So you want to make sure that I even had a client one time with the MetroCard ticket that he had in his 20s that came up as a judgment. And all of that has to be cleared when you're purchasing a property. So you want to make sure all of that is, check your records to just make sure you don't have any things like that you forgot about to pay a parking ticket, because that will come up as well. But I say once you're in contract, part of that contingency is working with your loan officer, and your attorney works with your loan officer and the bank attorney to ensure that your commitment is issued in the time periods as well. I don't know, Lisa, did you want to talk a little bit about?
I think, Sarah, I think if you can go to the next slide. Yep. So, everything Rashida said was 100% true. So, Rashida has done her job. She's gone you through due diligence. You've signed a contract, and now we have what's called a live deal. So, this is where working with a mortgage professional that works with your attorney a lot is a really, really good thing. Because when Rashida is doing her due diligence, she's going to reach out to me and say, hey, this is what I found out in due diligence. Will this be a problem? Or will that be a problem? And, like I mentioned from the beginning, we have so many products that 9 times out of 10, I can find a solution to whatever comes up. It's really just about learning about it sooner rather than later. So this is when working with a team that works together with a lot is really, at the end of the day, a huge benefit to you. So once we have fully executed contracts, we will be ready to go, because you and I have talked the whole time. We have updated documents. We're basically ready to go as soon as we have contracts signed from both buyer and seller. Once that happens, it's what's called a live deal. So we order the appraisal, you get initial disclosures to e-sign, and then basically we are working you to get through underwriting as soon as possible. And to be honest with you, this is where me and my team really, really shine. We just work through the process really, really quickly. And that's incredibly important, particularly if you're talking about buying a co-op. Because if you're buying a co-op, you have to have a co-op board interview. And a co-op board will not schedule a board interview until they have a full package, which includes the mortgage commitment letter. So until you have that, you're basically unable to schedule a board interview. Why is that important? Because some boards say, hey, come in tomorrow. Let's do the board interview tomorrow. Some boards say, you know what? It's going to be 2 months before we can see you. So the faster you get that mortgage commitment, the faster you have a board package, which means the faster you can get in front of a board. After you get that mortgage commitment, there will be a few minor things that need to be satisfied for clear to close. So for example, homeowners insurance. If you are buying a property, you need to have homeowners insurance, and you need to secure a policy and have the first year paid prior to closing. Little things like that. That's what we will work on as Rashida and the seller's attorney work on anything on their end, so that we're ready to go for the clear to close. I'm just looking at some of the questions. But that's basically the general idea. Once you have your commitment letter, then basically the focus is to get you to a clear to close situation. And that's something that you and me and the attorney will be working on together. And then Victoria and her team will be working really hard to have an awesome board package ready for the co-op if you're going to co-op, so that that's ready to go, so that as soon as you have the commitment letter from us, you just pop that into the file, and then you get scheduled for your board interview.
Right before this call or this workshop, I got a call from Tina saying that's a broker here in this office I work with a lot, and we have a sales listing on Pacific Street that the buyer for the property, not our buyer because we were representing the seller, is not getting their commitment by their second extension from Wells Fargo for the property. And the seller is going to freak out. And I want to kill the other broker who kept on promising the whole time, would have chased them to get the appraisal done, chase them to like follow up on the paperwork. They just have been so bad at their job. And it was somebody we hadn't worked with, but this was the best deal we had on the table for the sellers at the time. And, you know, we have to start from square one, and nobody wants to be in this position. The buyers don't want to be in this position either. Wells Fargo and, you know, misled them, and nobody stayed on top of driving this deal because their broker on the other end, you know, was incompetent the whole time. And Tina and I were calling and calling and calling and checking on it. And they were like always oblivious and not making this a priority because they were too busy doing other things. And now the deal is going to fall apart and their buyers should break up with them. Hopefully our sellers don't break up with us, but I think that we'll be able to sell it because now the market is even stronger. But it's so important on who you pick to work with, your advisors and, you know, the experts that you choose to move forward with. I've had red flags with Wells before, and this is not the first time. So it's important part of this process. So the other part, now that we're in contract, if you are going through a co-op, you work with your real estate broker to assemble your co-op package. And they will also guide you on how to present yourself in the interview. And assemble a beautiful package for you and make sure you've passed with flying colors, because they're going to consult with the seller's broker about anything that the seller was asked when they went through this process. There's a whole, you know, couple steps that go into it to make sure that you're best prepared for this experience and that you're going to pass with flying colors. So once that happens, so they don't even have their commitment line for the other deal. So now we're like 2 months in. That's the first thing you need. You cannot submit your board package until you have your commitment, because of the financing that Rashida will explain to you, that you don't want to jeopardize your financing contingency. So you want to make sure that all these things are done in the correct order and that you get your commitment immediately. And that means you do your appraisal immediately so that your mortgage professional gets your appraisal ordered immediately and you're on track to meet all your deadlines. And that you're actually going to get the loan at the end of the day, and your pre-approval actually means something. Like they're going to give you the loan. Then once you pass the board approval, then the board or the board's management has to send out a document saying that you've been, official document saying you've been approved. And then the lawyers can start working on what Rashida calls the circus act of scheduling the closing. So Rashida, do you want to talk about the end of this and getting the keys and all of that?
Yeah, definitely. So as Lisa, your bank has given you your mortgage commitment, so that contingency has been met. If you're looking at a co-op, you've been interviewed and you have been approved by the board. For a co-op, it has to be unconditional approval. Your contract will state that. So if the co-op comes back with any conditions, you have a right to cancel and get the return of your deposit. So those are your two reasons in your contract where you can get the return of your deposit. If you're not able to get the mortgage within the time period, or you get denied for your mortgage within the time period, right to cancel. Part of that mortgage contingency is your appraisal. So very important that your bank does the appraisal as well. And then your co-op approval if you're looking at a co-op. If you're looking at a house, the only main contingencies are your mortgage and title, and same thing for a condo. So both things have happened. Now you've got both. You've got the clearance to close. The bank is ready to close. There's no issues with title. It's been cleared up if there's anything that came up. So the next part is scheduling your closing. If it's a co-op, it can take roughly about a week to 2 weeks after you're approved by by the board, and also clearance to close, in order to schedule the closing for a co-op, because various documents have to be signed by the co-op board, and physically originals have to be sent to the management company. So I tell clients, just because you're clear, just because you're approved, you still may have another 2 weeks to go before you're able to schedule a closing for your co-op. If it's a condo or a house, the time period is a lot less. If it's a condo, we can typically get documents emailed to us pretty quickly from the management company, and we can schedule the closing with probably about a week's notice, because there's still documents that have to get, disclosures have to be sent out, fees, things that have to happen on the seller's end as well. So you're looking at probably about a week after you have been clear to close at minimum for you to schedule your closing if you're looking at a house or a condo. Your attorney is the main person that's going to be coordinating with all of the parties in order to get scheduled that closing. So you definitely want to have a conversation with your attorney, with the realtors, especially if you're planning on moving and things like that, rate lock issues that come up on timing wise of all of these things that have to happen. Because it's just not your schedule, unfortunately. There can be about 7 different parties, sometimes 8 to 9, if it's a co-op, that have to show up in person on the same day, at the same time, in the same location. Less if it's a condo or a house, but still coordinating with all of those parties. Additionally, you have to do a walkthrough prior to the closing. So you want to make sure that the seller has enough time to move out of the property if they haven't done that as well. You do your walkthrough at least, at minimum, I would say 48 to 24 hours prior to closing. I personally don't advise clients to do it the morning of the closing because you're stressed already with getting checks. You have so much to go on, you may miss something. And there's also not enough time if something comes up during that walkthrough for your attorney to get, have something resolved. So we really try to have you do your walkthrough within 48 to 24 hours prior to your closing. And you could always run to the unit prior, maybe the morning of, if you have enough time, if something, if you absolutely necessarily need to. But your main walkthrough you want to do prior to that, because part of closing is you get the keys and you give over your funds, and now the property is yours. And that means that nothing survives the closing. So if a day after you forgot, hey, I didn't check the washer dryer, or I forgot to turn on this light switch, you can't come back to your attorney and say, oh, I forgot to do this. Is the seller's responsibility? Your attorney's answer is going to be no. If it's new construction, there's some kind of, there's representations and things that survive. But if it's not just a resale, once you close, you're responsible for the property after that closing. So definitely want to make sure to do that. Yes.
Sorry, can I just interrupt real quick? I'm sorry, guys. I gotta head out. I got a babysitter that has to. But I just wanted to say goodbye real quick, and you'll have my contact information at the end. And any questions you have, just reach out.
Yeah, we'll just send the questions right to you, and you guys can, from whoever it is, and put you guys in touch if they're financing related. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Awesome.
Appreciate it. Have a great night.
Bye.
Thank you.
It's okay.
So yeah, so just wrapping up, as I said, your agent will do the walkthrough with you prior to closing, and your attorney will instruct you on what bank checks you have to bring, what personal checks you have to bring, or if it's a wire, what wire you need to send in time for your closing. At the closing table, it typically takes roughly about 1.5 to 2 hours of signing all of your documents, and that's where you're getting your keys and turning over the last of your funds.
So I do the final walkthrough with you, make sure the apartment's being delivered in the condition we expect it to be, that they've done all the repairs. Then we're the next day or 2 days after we go to the closing, you sign away and you get your keys, and then we all celebrate. And then it goes into the moving and the schlepping of all of your stuff and having it painted and any repairs and things you want done before you move into it. Do not schedule movers on the day of your closing. Always adds extra stress. We've tried to avoid stress as much as possible in this process. Please try not to add stress. If you need to ask your landlord for an extra week or two, buy yourself that time. In New York City, this short turnaround always ends up making everything more chaotic and making this process not as fun as it can be, or just a nightmare. If you schedule your movers on the day of the closing. So we'll just thank everybody. I'm going to go over the end of the stuff and then we'll open it up for questions real quick. And I have to also jump off in 20 minutes, so try to keep it short. We have a bunch of resources that we work with people. Like I said, you're going to get the video and our home buying handbook, but we also work with, we have all of our information about every step of the process in a library based on called base camp. So if you're in the inspection process, I detail out like what the inspection, here's a list of inspectors and what you should be asking, what you should be negotiating for. You have our database, scheduling, we have our home buyer handbook, and then you can schedule a call with us, as well as the video and things to go back to. So really the Basecamp database is like one of those valuable things that people really appreciate through going through the process. So we're going to open it up for questions, and if we can't answer them, then we can follow up another time and talk then. And we're going to put our Calendly link for everybody in the follow-up email so you can schedule a call to talk to us. And I really appreciate all of your time and attention, and look forward to working with you and guiding you through this process. So go ahead, questions in the chat. Go for it.
I see one question, Victoria, so I'll just say there's one question that says, for people who are pre-approved and have their offer paperwork in hand, what is the average amount of time you're seeing until they close in the current market? I will say still, even with the pre-approval, you're still looking at probably a 60-day time period for closings if you're looking at a house or a condo, and maybe 65 or 70 days, or still maybe 90 days with a co-op, because it's really the pre-approval is great, but it's really the commitment that matters. And that's really what's going to take the time. And most banks are still at that 30-day time period to get you a commitment letter, because they have to do the appraisal. They have to rely on getting documents from that specific condo or co-op board, to questionnaires answered. So you're still looking at, I'm saying most deals are around still 60 days for a co-op, or for a condo or a house, 90 days typically for a co-op. If it's all cash, then 30 days.
30 days.
Yes. There's another question. Do properties have multiple deal sheets in play once making it a race to get through the due diligence? I don't know if you want to answer that one.
Yeah, usually not, unless you're in some high profile situation. Usually that's not the case, that people pick an offer. If other offers come in, they then try to use that offer to leverage you to come up, and you have the opportunity to walk away, if and they can take the gamble if that's the right person to go with. It's always challenging to figure out what the right step is, but that's what the seller's brokers, they're trying to get the best deal for their seller, and it might not be you. But they're using those other deals to leverage their position to get more money or get more time or other things from you. So you have some time of the essence to try to get into contract, because if other offer, they'll show until you sign on the dotted line, because at any point you could lose your job. Your parents that were going to give you a loan are no longer going to give it to you. All these moving parts can slip, that your deal can fall apart until they need the backup. So they're showing until you sign. So multiple deal sheets don't usually go out, because it's not seen as very ethical, or if they're going out, they disclose it. But I would say it's very rare situation. You can answer the question about unpaid parking tickets. I don't know, actually.
The only unpaid tickets come up as judgments, or old tickets, lapse fees overall also count, unless it's actually gotten to the point where it becomes a judgment. That affects it. But if it's just outstanding and they haven't gotten to the point of a judgment, it will not come up. But once it becomes a judgment, then it does come up on a search.
Last question. If you are currently subleasing a unit from the owner of the unit in a co-op, and they've gone through the same approval process to rent as you would go through to buy, would that help expedite the process? You still have to go through the whole process over again, but it might, help you know that you'll pass the board approval because you passed the rental approval, but you're gonna have to go still through the whole process. If you know that you're renting hits the market, or if there was a private sale, it would expedite the process. That not going to expedite the process. You still can't submit your board approval till you have your commitment. Can't get your commitment unless you go through the pre-approval process. So you still have the same steps in place, whether it's a private sale or on the market. It just bodes well that you'll probably pass the board approval if you passed it to get into the rental.
Correct. I was going to say, I have about 2 deals right now where it's the current owned units who's renting, and they're selling to the owner is selling to the tenant, and the same process, board approval. But the board did interview them a little faster. That was the only kind of difference, but they still had to submit all of the same paperwork that you would do if it was a regular sale.
So Glad you like that, Victoria. Any other questions we can help you with? Great. I'm glad you thought it was helpful. We'll send our follow-up information. Looking forward to hearing from you all and staying in touch. And let us know if you need anything else. We're here to help. Have a great night, everybody.
Have a good night.